when asked, if you have an illness, and it should be okay to say, yes, I have a mental illness. I have anxiety, I have depression, I have bipolar. And it shouldn't be something that is scorned upon or looked down upon as, oh my, wow, she has bipolar. Oof, gonna get away from her as quick as possible.
Hey everyone, firstly, welcome to the Mental Health Wolf YouTube channel, which was created due to the success of the Legal Wolf podcast, which was set up to raise awareness of and tackle the global stigma of mental health. Secondly, mental health is something which is very close to my heart due to my own struggles throughout university and training to become a lawyer, but also something I'm really passionate about. So firstly, a bit about me. I'm a mental health lawyer, and I've been a mental health lawyer for 10 years. And I'm also on the executive committee for the Global Mental Health Peer Network, representing the United Kingdom. Finally, my future vision for mental health is for the support to be available for everyone, rather than the few who can afford the insurance to receive mental health care, which is a common issue that I have come across from talking to other countries in relation to my podcast. I also feel that we need to start thinking of mental and physical health as interlinked, because you cannot have one without the other, and they need to be linked together, because that is how we will tackle the stigma and normalize the conversation around mental health. Which now leads me nicely to introduce my co-host, Alena, and then our first guest on our YouTube channel, who is Sahar. And I would now like both Alena to do a short spiel and then Sahar to do a short introduction. So over to you, Alena.
Sure. So I'm Alena. I have a Bachelor of Arts in International Law and wrote my bachelor's thesis on mental health care, and particular the institutionalization of people with mental illness, and looked at basically the limits of mental health law in making sure that people are treated with the dignity that they are owed. And in that context, Steve contacted me a while back and asked if he could interview me for his podcast. And now I'm here with him on the YouTube channel. So that's fun. I'm currently based in Sweden and doing my master's. And we'll have a little chat about the big wide world here.
Fantastic. And now over to our first guest and the main event for this YouTube channel, Sahar. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. I've always wanted to be on a podcast and a YouTube channel. When you put it together, it's a PodTube, I think. I just made that up. But my name is Sahar Vasquez. I am from Belize. I, like Steve, am a part of the Global Mental Health Peer Network. I am the executive committee leader for Belize. And I am not a mental health professional. However, I do suffer with mental illness, and I am a very passionate mental health advocate. And that is what I want to spend my life doing, is advocating for mental health rights. Because I feel that we are in a space where mental health is looked down upon on something that is very taboo, and people with mental illness are looked at as crazy. And I am sitting here talking to you, and I don't think that I'm crazy, and I think that I'm doing okay, and I'm surviving. But I think it's important to stress, how difficult it is to live with a mental illness. Not just for the person, but for those around them. So yeah, that's my introduction, and I'm very happy to be a part of this podcast slash YouTube situation.
Cool. So PodTube. I like that word. This is going to contain some sensitive information about you, if I'm expecting the right thing, as well as just some really sad topics in general. So the viewers should be cautioned about that, but we hope that ultimately people will get out of this and think, wow, I learned something new and I'm hopeful about the future. To go back to the beginning, you said that you struggle with mental illness yourself and that has been a major motivator for you basically sitting in this virtual room today with us. Do you want to share your story with us in more detail?
Sure, I would love to share my story with you all. Okay, so about seven or 8 years ago, I was in like my senior year of high school, and it's an exciting time. You're gonna go to prom, you're gonna graduate, and I had a nervous breakdown. My body just kind of fell apart. And we couldn't find out. We went to doctors to see if there was anything physically wrong with me, and there wasn't. Turns out that I just had severe anxiety and depression, but my anxiety was so bad to the point where like I couldn't eat. I was just throwing up all the time. I didn't get out of bed for weeks. It was a very difficult period. I eventually managed, with the support and help of those around me, to get moving and to get going. But since then, it's been a battle, and it doesn't get, for me, I feel it doesn't get easier. And I can tell you right now, in this particular moment, I'm in a difficult space. I feel super depressed, and I deal with a lot of suicidal thoughts. I am an attempted suicide survivor, and I'm sitting here talking to you thanks to my mom, because she saved my life. Literally in the nick of time, I was on my balcony, with a noose around my neck, about to jump, and somehow things worked out, and she grabbed me before I could jump. But there are many days where I wish that she hadn't grabbed me, and that I had jumped, and it all happened, but it didn't. And I'm here for a reason, but it's extremely difficult. And my main diagnosis is borderline personality disorder, which often, which ties in with depression and anxiety and mood swings. And it also misconstrues a lot of my relationships, in the sense that I'm always like worried, okay, is my family gonna abandon me? Are my friends gonna leave me? Does anyone like me? Am I a burden? Why am I alive? Just this constant shouting in my head, which over time I've learned to tame a little bit more. But it's exhausting to have to deal with that, and to have to constantly be wondering, like, do people want me here? Like, is anybody gonna leave me? And also to deal with this sadness. I don't know how to explain the sadness. It's like I don't. It's like if you it's like if a rock is tied onto you and you jump into the sea, and you're trying to untie the rock from your waist, and you can't. Right? You're just struggling, and you're just struggling to get up for air, and that's kind of how it feels. It's, I call it mental anguish or mental torture, because it's difficult. I mean, yeah. I'm one of millions that, is dealing with this right now. And I'm also a former addict to benzodiazepines, specifically Xanax. I was taking unthinkable amounts of that. And they're like downers. So you have your uppers, I guess it should be cocaine, meth. I'm not too sure about that, but benzodiazepines are Xanax, Valium. The specific one that is, I think, the most addictive is the Xanax. And what that does for you, it basically just makes you just relaxed and sleepy. And so I used to take it a lot so that I could just sleep, and, I wouldn't have to deal with all the thoughts and all the chaos in my head. But it got to a point where I was just taking way too much, and, mixing it with alcohol, and it became very dangerous. And I did seek treatment for that. And I have relapsed before, but I've been clean for a year, and I think a year and 3 months now. So
Congratulations!
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a journey. I've been very tempted, especially during this time of COVID, to take it. But I think my main point is that mental illness, addiction, suicide, suicidal thoughts, suicide ideation, they're all so real, and they're all things that people right now in this very moment, including myself, are going through and dealing with, and trying to figure out, like, how do I get through this? Where do I go to get help? Like, what can I do? So, that's my goal in life, is to try and figure that out so that we can have a better system going forward. I can't, I'm at a loss for words to describe, like, honestly, how I'm still here. I really don't know. So it's, yeah.
Sorry for putting you in that tight spot right now, kind of
No,
telling you to answer a question which doesn't have an answer. My best friend is actually, she has the same diagnosis as you, and it's been, I know what it's like to not know what to do and not know how to express my emotions, and be that person who's trying to help but really doesn't understand what's going on. And then if I ask my best friend, she's like, I also don't know how to explain or what to do or what not to do. So
yeah. Yeah, it's a paradox in itself. But yeah.
And in terms of getting the mental health care, Sahar, was it possible for you to get that in Belize?
No, it wasn't. And I don't want to put my country down, because I think I live in a beautiful country. But our mental health care system is just very poor, and we don't have enough resources, facilities, psychiatrists, psychologists that are able to assist with this. So I went to many doctors, and many of these doctors were general practitioners, general doctors, who prescribed me different medications. And I did see counselors, and I saw some good counselors. We do have really good counselors here, I will say that. But when it came to finding or getting that diagnosis, I had to wait nearly 6 years to find out that, okay, you actually have borderline personality disorder with comorbidities of the anxiety and the depression. And so I had to go away to find that out. So it's like, if I had a pain in my head, like a really bad pain, I would want to know immediately, what is this pain? Why am I having it? I would go to the doctor, and it would be dealt with, right? We would figure it out in a week tops. But with mental illness, it takes years for people to find out what's wrong with them. So just like, imagine living with that, with living in the unknown, just knowing, okay, yes, I know, like, I feel depressed and I feel anxious, but there's something, like, there has to be some main crux to this whole situation. And that was my biggest thing. But I am very lucky, and I'm very thankful that I was able to get a diagnosis, so that I could move forward in a way with my life. Because before that, I was at a standstill. I had a job, and then I didn't have a job, and it just my relationships are getting messed up, and it just wasn't working out. So yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, in the sense that people do fall through the cracks, and they don't either get the diagnosis soon enough, or they fall through the cracks in terms of treatment being offered. And it's been a common theme in my discussions for the podcast, in that support isn't readily available for everyone. It seems to be that if you can afford the insurance in order to get support for your mental health, then you will get that support. But that insurance is so astronomically priced that it's only aimed at the middle to upper class. So essentially, it's only aimed to a minority of people who can afford it, whereas the majority of the people who cannot afford it, who may well suffer with some form of mental health problem. And the last statistics I had for the UK was that 1 in 4 suffers with a mental health problem, that they wouldn't be able to get the support that they need because they can't afford the insurance in a wide range in variety of countries, which is shocking in this day and age. I mean, we are in 2021, and essentially mental health care should be for everyone and not just for the few that can afford to have it. It shouldn't be classed as a privilege to have mental health care. It should be a basic human right.
You know, the statistics show that, over 800,000 people die by suicide a year. That's an alarming amount of people. The last time I had checked, that was 2019, when I had given a speech at the UN. But that's one person every 40 seconds. So we have to do better than this.
As a comparison, as far as I remember, like a rule of thumb from my childhood that I learned in school was that every 2 seconds, a person dies in general. And then one person dying of suicide every 40 seconds, that's not a big difference.
Yeah. Yep.
Shall we just take a quick kind of zoom out? Ooh, nice background. Kind of zoom out from this gloomy topic that we will return to in depth in a second, and just take a look at, you're located in Belize. And Belize has, as you said, not the best healthcare system. Would you want to give us a quick overview of Belize and mental health there, and the role of different stakeholders, such a fancy word, role of different actors, such as police, doctors, etc., etc.?
We have the second largest barrier reef in the world, so you could do some spectacular diving. We have the blue hole, which I'm so bad at this. I think it's a World Heritage Site. I think it is, but it's phenomenal. It's basically a blue hole in the middle of the sea. And it's just absolutely beautiful here. You have your islands where you can be on the beach, you can go swim in the sea, and then you have your inland where you can go hiking, you can see birds, jaguars, and we have incredible resorts here that will absolutely blow your mind. On Thursday, I am going on my vacation here in Belize to my favorite resort. And I am very excited because it is beautiful. I'm going to have the sea. I'm going to have a pool. I'm going to get a massage. It's just going to be great. So, I mean, in terms of medical health care, physical health care, it's good. But when it comes to mental health care, it's just, my biggest thing is that you need a proper psych ward. you need, I don't know, a building in which you have your psychiatrists, your psychologists, your counselors kind of all lined up there. So it's, I don't know, it's a tough question to answer. The best way I can answer it without um, dubbing my country, because I would never want to do that to Belize, as I love it so very much. But it's just very poor, and our police officers, for example, are not trained in how to deal with those who are mentally ill. Maybe they're having a crisis or a breakdown and they need help. And, our, who will we call, right? We could, the only people that we can really call are police officers. And what they do is they restrain them, and eventually some of them end up dying, not the police officers, the mentally ill person. So in the hands of the police. And, I don't want to completely blame them for that, because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to deal with that situation. But that is something that I'm hoping that we can change. I I have an NGO called Mind Health Connect Belize that I started with one of my closest friends, and that's our goal. At the moment, we do not have any money because we are an NGO, so yeah, we don't have money, but we're hoping that over time we're going to get donations and we're going to be able to build, all these great things, these mental health facilities, these rehab centers. Um, we're going to be able to fly in professionals to train police men and women, nurses, doctors, and how to deal with mentally ill people, and how to treat them appropriately and properly and like humans.
Doing a good job at that. Thank you so much. So you said that you have an NGO. Is that one of the very, very few ones that do anything on mental health in Belize, or is it a overcrowded field where everything's already being done?
Oh, no. We're one of the very few that do anything when it comes to mental health in Belize. But I will say that we have garnered a lot of support from government agencies or people in the private sector that have been willing to to help. And I think that I have seen over probably since 2019, so maybe over a year now, people really start to open their eyes up to mental illness. And I think a lot of that has to do with COVID and just being locked up and just feeling like these weird feelings of sadness, anxiety, etc. So in that sense, it's good, and I'm hoping that that trend continues and people continue to speak up. Because the reason I share my story, which I don't quite enjoy doing because I have to do it often, but I share it because I really and truly believe that sharing can save lives, because sharing saved my life 7 years ago, roughly, again, when I was in the pits of my depression and anxiety and just feeling like death. Someone else sharing their story saved my life in that sense. So that's why I do what I do. And yes.
So what's the name of your NGO, and when did it start, and what have you guys been doing?
It's named Mind Health Connect Belize. We have been around for about 5 years, but we officially launched in, I think it was November 2019. And to bring in people to train, like I said, frontline workers on how to deal with mentally ill patients, and to have a proper facility for people with mental illness to go. And that includes me, when I need somewhere to go, just to to talk to someone, we need that. So I think those would be the two main things. We have been doing things with COVID. We've had a lot of people reach out to us and ask for help. And we've been, we were posting a lot of stuff about how to deal with anxiety, depression, mental illness during COVID. Our main office is our website, which is mindhealthconnect.com. And on the website, you can find like places in Belize where you can get help, like, public clinics and stuff like that. Or you can find private counselors or psychiatrists that can help you. So the website is our main hub, and I think that is helpful. And it does have quite a bit of information.
Okay. What has been your favorite activity or something where you were like, this was a success and I love that we're around to make this difference? Is there anything that springs to mind?
It would probably be I think Mental Health Day, World Mental Health Day. I don't know. Well, here in Belize, I think it was in April, and so what we did was we asked everyone to wear green, but whatever, it was a green shirt, a green mask, a green hat, didn't matter. But I really didn't think that anybody would do it, and so many people did it, and it was just absolutely amazing to see that support, and to see people, just even though it was COVID times, people just posting up their selfies on Facebook, just wearing green with the hashtag "There's no health without mental health." And for me, that was just a fantastically glorious day, and that was a win. That was a big win. And probably, I think, on a personal level, just getting to speak here with you all right now is a big success for me. Getting to speak at the United Nations. I spoke what Donald Trump was speaking, and then I was speaking in another room. But I think people liked my speech more. I don't know. But that's when I was walking out of the room after my speech. They're like, yeah, Donald Trump was speaking, but we were watching your speech. And I was like, yeah, good choice. And I recently got to speak at a global mental health conference, which is awesome. So, there's these varieties of incredible opportunities that I've gotten, and, I've gotten to be a part of. And Mind Health Connect has gotten to be a part of. So, and I hope that in the future we will get to be a part of much more. And I don't know, 20 years from now, things will look a lot different, not just here in Belize, but around the world for mental health.
I love that in your enumeration of things that have happened, you put us being on this PodTube next to speaking at the United Nations. That was just absolutely lovely.
Awesome. I mean, I'm so excited to listen to this. Well, I don't like listening to myself, but I'm just excited that it's going to be out there in the world. And I don't know, somebody with a really deep pocket is going to hear it and be like, oh, I'll just give them some money, and I'll take it. So yeah, but this is awesome. I love podcasts too. So yeah.
What was that like, speaking in front of arguably some of the most powerful people in the world who can make a real difference towards how mental health is viewed, how mental health is treated? And what kind of reaction did you get after you gave your speech?
So the global the global mental health conference. I don't know if that's the exact name of it, but it's something to that effect. That was done virtually, so I didn't. I had to. It was like pre-recorded, so I didn't really get to see people's reaction. I'm not really gonna see their reaction until next week, Tuesday. So I'm hoping that goes well. But when it comes to the UN, so it was this side event. They have a lot of different side events that happen at the UN, and this one was for the spouses of Caribbean leaders, so the wives of the prime ministers in the Caribbean. Um, it was absolutely intimidating. These were all phenomenal women who had, great success in many areas. So I was understandably very nervous. And it was I was in New York, which is one of my favorite places. But I just, it was scary. It was very scary. My whole body was shaking. Um, but I think the response was well. I got a standing ovation, so I think that's good. And it was just something that I guess people were talking about for a while. It was nerve wracking before. It was nerve wracking during, but it was amazing afterwards.
Now, in terms of the stigma surrounding mental health, how is mental health perceived in Belize, Sahar? And also, what do you feel we can do to tackle the stigma to normalise the conversation?
It's perceived as something that, when someone has a mental illness, they're crazy, and nobody really wants to be around them, or is a bit disturbed, maybe afraid of them. But I mean, I don't want to just stress this to Belize. You know, this is all over the world, where people are acting like if you have a mental illness, it's contagious, and it's not. Um,
So the event that
so
you had at the United Nations, that definitely raised awareness with the rich and powerful, to put it that way. But awareness raising is much, much more than that, especially since actual challenging stigma, etc., depends on our immediate surrounding.
the thing is, I actually do have a full-time job as a teacher. So being an advocate is like my second job that I don't get paid for. But it's something that I want to get paid for.
I mean, one of the things that I've been fairly passionate about is education and providing education within schools, be it start primary school, obviously age appropriate, so you don't scare the children off in regards to mental health, but just to start talking about mental health, what good mental health is, what the signs are in relation to poor mental health, and what support would be available to someone if they were struggling. So when you get to mid-teens, late teens, early 20s, you then start to think of mental health differently, because it's far easier to change the mindset of a child, for instance, than someone who's in their 40s, 50s, even me, who's in their 30s. A lot of 30-year-olds plus have a fixed view on the world and a fixed view on society and how we should treat people.
It should not be looked upon that we need to educate our world on what and mental illness and how it works and what it is. I think that is the main goal for perhaps the next 100 years, to educate the world on mental illness and how we talk about it. You know, we should not go around saying that people are crazy, they've lost their mind. These things that's wrong. You're breaking human rights by saying that. You're violating somebody's human rights by saying that. And you're hurting that person. Words hurt. And I did an activity with my students where I had them draw a heart, and then I had them crumple or smash up the heart. and then open it back up. And when you open up the heart, obviously there are lots of wrinkles on it. So all those wrinkles are all the words that people have said to you that have hurt you. So I think a lot of thinking before we talk and educating young people, but from the time they're kids. I work at a school where it's not that we're talking about, we're saying, okay, well, this is mental health and these are all the different mental illnesses and blah, blah, blah. But we're teaching them about, anxiety and feeling sad and, feeling angry, and just knowing that those feelings are totally okay to feel. There is nothing wrong with them. It's good that you feel them. It's good that you acknowledge them. And here are the things you can do to help yourself when you have those big emotions. So I guess my point is, it starts with education from the youngest level, from as young as we can get, 5 or 6 years old. And then we keep going from there.
Is that like a active program that you have at your school where it's a separate class on emotions, or are you just kind of incorporating that into your other teaching activities?
It's called social and emotional learning. So it's like a separate, I don't want to say it's a subject, I guess more of an activity, but where every day you do a different SEL, social emotional learning activity. That teaches them about feelings, emotions, how to cope, what to do when, they're feeling this or that, and you act things out. Obviously with COVID, we've had to do it all online, but we'll be reopening school in April. So, we can do these things in person. But I think that social and emotional learning is important in elementary school and high school and even in college, probably more so in college, because those guys are they're out there. And even in offices, social emotional learning is extremely important, because as adults, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know, what we're feeling this, like, what should I do? Should I just go drink? Should I take a bunch of pills? And, those are, I want to say, good alternatives. They were for me. But, they're not the right alternatives. There are other things you can do, whether it's mindfulness, deep breathing, meditation, self-affirmations, things like that. So, yeah.
And in terms of the role that film and television can portray, there aren't that many positive stories in a TV series surrounding mental health or films. And Alena knows exactly what I'm going to say next, which is that the only film that I know of that sheds a positive light on mental health is A Beautiful Mind. And there's two reasons why I say that. One is I want royalties for every time I've plugged this on my podcast, and now I'm plugging it on YouTube. But secondly, it highlights, so a brief synopsis of the film is a maths professor paranoid schizophrenia, and the film changes midway through, whereby you suddenly realise that this guy is suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, but there is no indication of that leading up to the halfway point in the film. And then you find out what he has had to contend with, what his struggles have been. He's gone through ECT, which is portrayed in probably an accurate way at the time of when the film came out and the era that the film was representing. But then you can find out that even if you have such a serious illness like paranoid schizophrenia, that you can win prize for mathematics, and he copes with the paranoid schizophrenia without taking any pills, and he deals with it with his own coping strategies. Now, as far as I'm aware, that is the only film that shows that essentially you can achieve anything in life, even if you have a mental health problem, and even if you have a very serious one in paranoid schizophrenia.
I watch a lot of movies, and I recently saw this movie called A Beautiful Boy, or it's called Beautiful Boy, and it's about a beautiful boy who is brilliant, and he has incredible parents, and it's just it's awesome, but he has this void inside him, right? And he fills that void with drugs, really heavy drugs. We're talking crystal meth being the main one, and this is a true story. But I think it sheds a light on addiction and how real it is for family members and for the person involved in it. You can send them to rehab time after time after time again, and it doesn't work, and there comes a point where you're just gonna have to say, I love you, but there's not much more I can do. But in the end, he comes out sober, and he's been sober, I think, for 8 years now, maybe a little bit more. But I think the media is starting to do a better job with portraying mental illness. And maybe that's because I watch a lot of movies, so I see it. And I like to see mental illness in movies because I want people to see what it's like what it's like for that person. I don't know if this is a good example, but the movie Joker, the new one that came out, he had severe mental illness. But I think one of the main things in that movie is that his mental illness was not treated. No one cared. No one cared that he had a mental illness. And then look what happened in the end, right? So, I really love that the film industry is doing a lot of that, is looking at that, is looking at addiction, it's looking at suicide, it's looking at mental illness, it's zooming in on it so people can really see. And it's telling these incredible true stories of people's lives. And so I really and truly hope that continues to happen. And I would like to direct a movie one day about mental illness, about somebody's story with mental illness, and I also think that, again, as humans, we look up to celebrities, whether that be Justin Bieber or Tom York. These are all people that have mental illness. And these are all people that I look up to, not so much Justin Bieber, but I love Tom York, but he's a strange guy, right? Like, you look at him and he's like, he's kind of awkward, but it's because he's an anxious guy, and then he has to go and perform in front of millions of people that just love his music and are totally obsessed with him. Or you look at someone like Demi Lovato, who she almost died and she came back, right? But I think, or Billie Eilish, who I'm totally obsessed with right now, she's amazing. And for a person her age, she has made music that has highlighted mental illness. When you listen to it, you hear it, you understand it. I mean, she talks about wanting to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, and she speaks about her own depression, her own anxiety. So we're having people come to the forefront, and that is so, I was gonna say a bad word, but I'm not gonna say the bad word, but it's so awesome, and I love it, and I just want people to keep on doing that.
My favorite type of media is still the ones where the protagonist has some sort of mental illness, but that's not the core of the plot, where it just kind of pops up sometimes, like in John Green's Turtles All the Way Down. The main plot is her trying to get some money from some rich guy who died, and they're trying to find his hidden treasure. But she also suffers from OCD. Or there's some movie where a woman has a body-focused repetitive disorder where she's pulling out her hair, but that's never tackled. It's just kind of there, and that's her. And I love that. And I'm so hyped that this is becoming more and more and more.
Yes, exactly. That's it right there.
So your movie will contribute to that. And if there's any funders out there, even more reason to make sure that Sahar soars.
Yeah, I mean, that was fascinating when you were talking about Billie Eilish, because she got the gig to do the soundtrack for the most recent Bond movie, awesome. Which we're still waiting to come out. But it's now I understand the link why she got it, because the film is called No Time to Die. And if she's passionate about mental health and sings about mental health with her lyrics, there is probably no better film to be associated with than a film called No Time to Die. What would your future vision be, Sahar?
For me, it would be, like I always say, just like you have any physical illness, to have a mental illness, like you said, Alena, you're watching a movie and whatever, the girl was picking out her hair, which I used to do. I still do that at times as well. And it was just kind of like, yeah, that's what it is. That's who she is. That's what she's dealing with. All right. Just like if someone has cancer and they just went through a round of chemo and they're throwing up, that's what it is. I just want it to be something that's normalized. I want it to be something that is okay to have, that people don't have any shame in having or saying, and that we do not have people suffering in silence. We do not have 800,000 people dying per year of suicide. I want it to be normalized. And I surely cannot do that by myself. But I think that a lot of people are starting to step up, and a lot of big people are starting to step up.
And then ultimately we'll get the budget allocation and everything in healthcare to the level that it belongs. So once we've come over that first step of talking about something, we can then get to the actual action.
The next question I have is, if you could sit down and have a drink with a famous or inspirational person, and that they can be dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Can I pick like 20 people? Can it just be like a round table of people? I am gonna say Brené Brown. She is a really great writer, and she writes books about, I'd like to say daring greatly, but I even feel like she teaches you about like vulnerability and, accepting that. But there's so many people. I just probably definitely Prince, Bono, Thom Yorke, Malcolm Gladwell, Oprah, Michelle Obama, Billie Eilish. Yeah.
I like a plan. We'll make it happen. Let's do it.
Well, yeah, I'd hope that they all want to meet me as well.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on as our first guest on the Mental Health Wolf YouTube channel. and I'm sure the listeners will have been inspired by a lot of what you've said. Your story is very powerful, and it will not only educate people, but I'm sure it will inspire a lot of people.
And ultimately, isn't education all about inspiration to be better and envisage a better world?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure for me to be on this podcast, and I hope that on the next time you invite me on the podcast, by then I would have met like the 200 people that I would have wanted to meet. So yeah.
Sahar, if anybody wants to contact you, how would that work?
Okay, well, you guys can reach me via email at vasquezsahar@gmail.com. I know that will be linked below, so if you don't know how to spell it, it will be right there. Or I am going to give out my cell number, which might be a crazy thing to do, but I really want people to reach out. So you can contact me via cell phone at +501 610 6303. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Sahar Vasquez. And if you'd like to donate money to Mind Health Connect Belize, you can visit our website, mindhealthconnect.com, and click that donate button. Even if it's just $1, we will appreciate it. So thank you.